Welcome, everybody, to Krystal, Kyle, and Friends. Today we're going to be talking to Christian Smalls, who is, he's got a fascinating story. He worked for Amazon. When the pandemic hit, he looked around and was like, there are zero protections, and they don't care. And he was watching his coworkers, throw up and fall over, and everybody was sick, and it was terrible. And he was like...
And meanwhile, Amazon's like, everything's fine. No one's getting sick.
Yeah, he was like, I think we should make some changes here. And so he was a whistleblower. He blew up big in the media. We all owe him a debt of gratitude for that. Now he's working on an Amazon labor union. So the guy's fascinating, and I think you're going to really enjoy it. But before we get into that, a little bit of personal YouTube news here. Okay. That was... It's somewhat shocking, even though it shouldn't be. So let me explain what I mean by that. Donald Trump recently went on the Full Send podcast. Was it Full Send or No Laying Up? I think it's Full Send.
Full Send.
Yeah, it's the Nelk Boys, right? And so now I had watched that podcast a few times before. I watched one with John Daly. I watched one with Paulie D, who's my doppelganger, by the way. Funny enough. And, it just strikes me as... classic kind of bro-y podcast where bros are just being bros. And so it's got a huge following, and a lot of people really like it. So they interviewed Donald Trump. Now, I did a whole segment on it, almost a 25-minute segment on it, where I sort of broke down the more interesting moments of it. And, my main takeaway was like, they're doing the thing that Rogan sort of refused to do. And the Trump people approached Rogan and wanted to come on his podcast, and Rogan was like, he thought about it for a while, but then ultimately he decided against it because they had conditions. They were like, come to the White House, and they only wanted a shorter amount of time. And he's like, look, man, that's not what I do, number one. Number two, I don't want to, serve as some sort of, bump for Trump when I don't agree with most of what the guy does, right?
Yeah.
So, and I remember I talked about this on my breakdown of that interview that Rogan actually reached out to me and I'm sure a few other people and was like, look, I might interview Donald Trump. If you were to interview Donald Trump, what are the questions you would ask him?
Yeah, basically, if he was going to do it, he wanted to do it right.
Yeah.
In the right format and with enough time and with enough preparation to really press him on the things that need to be pressed.
Now, one of the criticisms of Rogan is that, and, he even spoke to this recently with a whole bunch of the scandals, was like, hey, you really didn't do enough preparation to deal with these guests that are pushing controversial views. And there's certainly an element of truth in that. But what we saw in this instance was like, when the stakes get the highest of the high, which is the fucking president of the United States, he steps his game up and he's like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to try to do it right. Yeah. So anyway, that's a long way of me getting to this point. Trump goes on this podcast, sits down with these guys. There are a bunch of funny moments. There are a bunch of classic Trump moments. There are a bunch of horrible policy ideas in there, as always with Donald Trump.
Obsession with windmills.
Random obsession with windmills, of course. And my favorite part was YMCA, the gay anthem. Tremendous song. People love it. They love it. He's talking about the songs he picks.
Yeah.
And he's like, what really gets them going? YMCA.
That was
the YMCA.
That was a core of his campaign this time. It was no longer trade and bring the jobs back. It was like, I'm going to dance the YMCA.
Yeah. And it was so funny to me because it's so dated. He's showing his age there. I made the joke. It's kind of like being like, who's the most smoking babe around? Betty White. Betty White is so sexy. She's so hot. And the woman who plays I Love Lucy, amazing. Tremendous legs. But anyway, that podcast was banned by YouTube. They deplatformed it. They pulled down the entire podcast. And so at first I was a little surprised, but then you realize, why they did it?
Stop the steal.
Because in every interview and every speech Trump does, he does the whole a rigged election. It was a rigged election. It was totally unfair. And this even happened, I remember, to the Deep Fat Fried guys, TJ the Amazing Atheist and all of his co-hosts. They had made fun of the conspiracies about a rigged election. And because they brought up the rigged election, their thing was pulled down. I remember this because I covered it on my show. Yeah. And so they pulled down an actual Trump. They got millions of views within 24 hours. They just pulled it down. So I covered it. Now, this is where it gets really amazing. So in my breakdown of that interview, which again is about 25 minutes, I just played the more interesting parts, a little mashup of it, and then some other slightly longer parts that were about policy. And at no point did I play Donald Trump saying the election's rigged, etc. I didn't cover that.
Not even in the clip.
Not in the clip at all. None of the clips that I showed. YouTube still, they copyrighted me, the Nelk Boys, which is, guys, get your fucking shit together. Stop being copyright pirates. Let your shit go. I let my shit go. They let their shit go. That's what any normal person on YouTube does. Oh, my stuff is too special to be spread around. Fuck you. Don't do that shit. Anyway, they copyrighted it because they're assholes. Sorry, but it's true. And then YouTube blocked it. YouTube deplatformed my thing when it didn't even have the rigged election thing in it. So go ahead and show that graphic, guys. I want to show everybody. So you could see the monetization says ineligible because there's a copyright claim. That's the restriction underneath that you could see there. I had almost 97,000 views on the video, and you can see
thumbnail.
Visibility blocked. Blocked. And the title, Trump Goes on Full Send Podcast, talk Rogan, Ukraine, communism, and more. He's such a jackass. He compared the U.S. to Venezuela in there, by the way.
Oh, my God.
Hilarious. That's one of the things I talked about. But it's blocked. They pulled it down. They deplatformed my video. Wow. They censored my video. Now, I went back and listened to it. I think there is one part where I mention that Trump brings up the January 6th thing, but I bring it up to make fun of it and slap it down and say, hey, Dippy, the polls show Americans want you to shut up about this. There was a poll that came out where even Republicans are like, all right, we got to move on. Nobody wants you to talk about it. Yeah. Nobody wants you to talk about it. You're wrong. This video might even get pulled because now I'm talking about it, even to slap it down. There were 60 court cases. He lost almost every single one of those court cases. And any one that he won was totally inconsequential in terms of the outcome of the election. They had the Arizona audit where where Biden ended up getting more votes than we thought on election day. Whereas the Trump people thought, it's going to reverse Arizona when we do this. Actually, no, Biden won by more when they looked into it.
Right.
So the only time I mentioned it, if I did mention it, was to say, he said this stuff and it's really stupid and he shouldn't say it. And by the way, it's wrong. They pulled down my video.
That's insane.
So this is, okay, what's the point of us talking about this? This is the exact kind of slippery slope of censorship that we always talk about. It's the slipperiest slippery slope of all time. This isn't theory anymore. The reason why we talk about it is because we're more than halfway down that slope already. Like, why on earth should my video have been pulled for that? There's no reason that my video should have been pulled for that.
Not to mention, it's insane that you're going to pull the former president of the United States and who might again be the president of the United States. Like, we should know what this asshole is saying.
Right.
Good, bad, or indifferent.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the fact that you're suppressing some of his most obnoxious and most obscene and most insane commentary is actually a help to him. Mm-hmm. I mean, not only do you play into his narrative about, we're the victims and we're being censored and they don't want you to hear the truth, but actually, his approval rating has started to tick up since he's been deplatformed from Twitter because it's not as fresh in people's minds how obnoxious, insane this guy was. All the things that they hated about him, some of that has receded into their memory because he's not on Twitter every day and it's not in your face every day. And the fact of the matter is, people don't want to endlessly fixate, even people who are susceptible to his bogus claims about the election. That's not what they want to focus their entire politics around moving forward into 2024. And that's actually showing right now in some of the endorsements that Trump has made. And I don't know if you followed this, but he looks like he may go 0 for 3 in his Senate primary endorsements because he centered his endorsements and made the litmus test, the one thing everybody had to be totally on board with was not any policy issue, but was his stupid Stop the Steal stuff. And it's being rejected in Georgia, in North Carolina, and in Alabama in favor of other candidates. So anyway, it's insane to think that it doesn't have news value and shouldn't be in front of the American people what Donald Trump is saying.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to pull up as we speak right now. Oh, here we go. I think I got it. Republicans. There's a poll, CBS News poll of Republicans. What should leaders and parties talk about? Okay. The economy, 90% say talk about that. Inflation, 89% say talk about that. Crime and policing, 84% say talk about that. January 6th, 15% of Republicans say talk about that. So in other words, and I think this is very clear and laid out by the data here, the more Trump talks about this, the more his numbers go down.
Yeah.
So it's amazing that the media, in a rush to bury Trump and protect people from Trump and try to make sure Trump doesn't happen again, they're making it more likely that he's going to happen again, which is the exact same shit they did in 2015 and 2016 when they gave him billions of dollars worth of free media. And every time they would attack him over the dumbest thing. I told you, the one that always sticks out in my mind is I remember one time he was doing a rally and he said that the TPP is going to rape us. It's going to rape this country. And CNN and all these big media outlets were so offended that he used the word rape that they were, clutching their pearls and falling on their fainting couch. And they talked about it for a day straight. And I remember watching it going, there are so many ways to attack this guy where you actually paint him as a monster and you make it so nobody wants to vote for him, but you're not you're not doing that. If anything, you're highlighting the fact that he says outsourcing our jobs is bad, which he's right about.
My favorite example of what you're talking about is the whole, like, he's not a real billionaire. Real billionaires support us.
Yeah.
That's my favorite example of that. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
No, this is not it. Do not go in this direction. But yeah, they think that they're like helping prevent Trump, I guess, or helping stick it to Trump. And really what they're doing is erasing his worst attributes so people forget that this dude is completely obsessed with himself and his own election results and is not, in fact, concerned with or has any realistic plans to deal with the things that people, Democrat, Republican, and Independent actually care about. And we know that that's the case because this is a big reason why they lost those 2 Senate races in Georgia. Democrats, for once in our entire lifetime, had a good message about, if you vote for us, we're going to get you checks.
And also, my opponents are super corrupt, too, and they were.
Yeah, that's right. And the Republicans, meanwhile, were out there, ranting about stop the steal. And guess what? Even though history predicted that Republicans should pick up both of those seats, not just because it's Georgia, but because of the way that the electoral results between the runoff and the actual election normally trend. So this should have been gimmies for Republicans, and they lost both of them because of their obsession over stop the steal. So you're not helping anyone by hiding this stuff. That's
right. And to get back to the censorship thing, because we can end on this point, but so let's think about it for a second. They're saying, okay, this we're going to ban. All right, so now the floodgates are open. The idea is conspiracy theories must be banned. For some reason, right now, they're trying to narrow it to but just this one. Only this one, right? But the floodgates are open. So then you go, and this is semi the case already because of Alex Jones, right? The Sandy Hook conspiracy. Okay, gone. 9/11 conspiracy theories. Should those go? Yes or no? JFK conspiracy.
It's not conspiracy. That's just.
But this is what I'm getting at. This is what I'm getting at. And then, of course, you go down the list, and you have the Tuskegee experiments and Operation Northwoods and Operation Paperclip, like all those the proven ones.
Well, I'm gonna guess we're not gonna ban the Russiagate conspiracies. That one's never gonna be.
Well, and that's the devastating overarching point here, which is like, if it's the conspiracy theories that go along with the narrative approved by the establishment types, totally fine. If it's not, we're gonna axe it. And the bottom line is, guys, there cannot be a ministry of truth, because whoever is in that ministry of truth is fucking fallible, and they have their own biases, and they have their own blind sides, and they have their own problems. And who's going to fact check the fact checkers? And then who's going to fact check the fact checkers who fact check the fact checkers? This is basic stuff here that we're talking about.
So banning the president, an interview with the president, is one level. And then banning even covering. You can't even cover what he said in that interview. When you're not covering the banned statements from that interview. This is insane. And especially for anyone who's trying to do independent news and journalism, how do you possibly cover the news when you can't talk about or even cover what the former president of the United States is saying?
Yeah.
That's truly insane.
It is insane. But look, this stuff is really, I hate where we're at right now with all the censorship and deplatforming. When you look at what happened to one of my Rogan podcasts, where Joe was quoting something Kanye West said, and so he was reading it, and he said N-I-G-G-A. And they said that's equal to, and just as bad as N-I-G-G-E-R, and it's equal to using N-I-G-G-E-R as if you're calling somebody that maliciously. And so they pulled down the whole podcast. And it's like, what? What are we doing here? What's going on here? And so now, I hate this, man. I really like that video that I had up there. Now it's gone. Nobody else could watch it. I could still watch it, right? It's very weird. But, I hate it, and it's annoying, and I expect more of this to happen in the future. So anyway, guys, just support. If you like this show on Substack, $5 a month, you're the only ones who support us for this show, just so everybody understands that. We don't take any corporate money for the show at all, no ad money whatsoever. There would be advertisers lining up down the block if we were like, cool, we'll do some ads, but we don't want to do that. We want to keep it more pure. We want to totally rely on you guys. So if you support this show, pay $5 a month, you get the video of the show, and you get it a day early. Everybody else can listen to the audio podcast for free. And also, look, shameless plug right now for what I do on with Secular Talk and the Kyle Kulinski show too. If you support me there, pay $1 or $2 on Patreon per month, and that helps me a lot as well. And when you look at stuff like this, you can't help but think, Jesus Christ, we better have contingency plans in place, because if that video got pulled, any video can get pulled because there was absolutely no reason whatsoever for that video to get pulled.
I mean, I will say I've been pretty Rumble skeptical, but YouTube is going out of their way to make the case for other platforms, because if you can't even just do the basics of the job, that's a pretty compelling, that's a pretty persuasive argument for having a space where you can do that and your content isn't going to be affected.
That's right. But that's why, that's why you built Breaking Points with the business model you built Breaking Points on. You guys rely on your audience, and your audience takes care of you. And, I remember, I'm the OG on that front, because when I remember Adpocalypse hit, and overnight they just took all of our funding away. I was like, holy shit, what do I do? And so we launched a Patreon, and then the audience flat out saved the show in one day. They were like, okay, yeah, we'll pay you $2 a month, $5 a month, $7 a month, and just keep doing what you're doing, because it was terrifying. Imagine just overnight, all the income's gone, and they can do it again, which is why the Patreon is still the main thing that I rely on in order to be able to feel like no matter what, we're going to be okay, because it's all about relying on the audience. But look, this stuff makes it clear you can't trust anybody in the hierarchy of command, even on YouTube, and that's a goddamn shame.